that focuses Legal Server is a case management system that focuses primarily on legal aid organizations and public defenders. We've got clients ranging from the EU to the Central Pacific, and a wide number of them. A few of them are now using a Legal Server Docassemble integration. A couple, like Diaz at HVL, are using an older version of this that is less integrated. And so this is a much more integrated and more supported version that we've rolled out in the last year. Legal Server's got some native document templates. There's some limitations to them. It has to be an RTF file. There's no if statements available. You're very limited in terms of the fields, right? You can't transform the values that you're sending it from Legal Server, right? I can make something all caps. I can make something all lowercase, but I can't reformat a date or add two numbers together. So we built out a Docassemble integration. This comes with a GitHub package that sort of is the all of the Python code and pieces that you need. And this is a public repository that people can access to link into Legal Server. We've got two versions of this package, and I think that's probably some of the more interesting parts of this. One is the public one that everyone can see, and one is a private one, which is where we do our development. And then when we're happy with the development, we copy things over. The private package is also the one that's got all of the automated testing associated with it. I know Michelle mentioned AL Kiln. We're using that as well for I think like a dozen automated tests on this package just to test different pieces of the functionality. We've also built in some Python unit tests and MyPy and Bandit automated testing. And then we're using GitHub to automate those tests, right? So those tests are running on a twice daily arrangement against one of our Legal Server test sites. And that means that as our developers update the test sites, right, we're running against the most recent code versions of Legal Server to know, did we introduce any breaking changes? That's always the concern within a Legal Server. And then I think it's also worth talking about the flow of data in this case, right? So we're starting with the Legal Server case management system. And then this integration pushes some information to Docassemble's Redis store. And it's pushing some very basic information about the Legal Server case that you're wanting to pass, right? It's pushing the case's unique ID. It's pushing the current user's unique ID. It's pushing what site you're coming from, right? That's basically all it's sending to Redis. And then it's offering an interview URL to the end user with URL parameters that are going to pull from that Redis store, right? And so that's how we're making sure that when I click that link for that URL, right, Docassemble will force me to authenticate so that I know that I'm logged in. I can actually do what I want to be doing, that sort of thing. But it didn't mean that we had to know which user specifically was going to be logging into Legal Server, into Docassemble to create that interview. Right. Once they've logged in, once they've opened the interview link, then the Docassemble interview grabs the data from the Redis, right? Reaches out to Legal Server, says, I now know the unique ID for this case. Let me pull everything else back, and then uses the Legal Server APIs to grab all sorts of information about the case, right? That can be everything from who else is assigned to this case. Is this letter going to the client? Is this letter going to the pro bono volunteer? Is this, what kind of case is this? When was this opened? All of those sorts of things. And then when the document's finally generated, right, either it submits a case note back to Legal Server saying, hey, we did this case note, or we did this thing in Docassemble, or it can save that document back to Legal Server, right? So that you're still using Legal Server as your document storage going forward. So that's how this integration works. I'm gonna jump over to a demo. Redis is a Docassemble service that runs automatically that allows us to store data in it, right? It's not quite the same thing as its Postgres backend, but it's a backend piece that allows you to say like, hey, I want to store this data securely in the backend, and then you can retrieve that using a unique ID, right? There's some pieces to it, right? And when I was building this out, I relied heavily on the Docassemble questions Slack channel, and talked through this with Jonathan and some other people, Quentin among them, to try and get idea of, right, I wanted to store some of this information securely. I didn't want to pass all of this information in uh, over the web, and so that's where that's coming from. All right, so let's stop my share and then share my other screen. All right, so this is a legal server site. We've got a list here of Docassemble interviews that are available from this client. If I click this launch this Docassemble interview, this is making the API call to post the data in Redis. And then you can see here on the sample letter, if I hover over it, you'll see that there's it tells me what interview and what stash secret it's going to be pulling, right? That's all in the URL parameters. I can click this and it'll open my Docassemble window for me. Right. One of the things that I haven't done is I haven't moved all of the get data elements behind a background task. And so that's one of the things that I want to do to allow us to throw up the, I guess, splash screen going like getting your Docassemble data or your legal server data. But you can see here, right, this is for a sample letter. It's asking me about who the client is, right, who the recipient is. And obviously, when we've talked with about this for other users, right, these fields could be defaulted on specifics, on examples. But I offered, right, is this going to be an email? Is this going to be a letter? I'm going to pick letter 1. One of the things that I really liked, this uses the DA lazy templates, which means that I can have a template here that got populated. And this is obviously pulling in the case number from legal server, when they applied, what their legal problem code was, who the assigned attorney is, right? That sort of thing. And I made this fairly simple, but one of the things that was important to me was the ability to edit this letter before it actually gets sent. And so that's what's happening in this way. And then if I click continue, one of the other complaints that we had is we've got a lot of clients who have multiple offices, and multiple offices means multiple letterheads. Because all of these organizations like to have the managing attorney of this office listed on their letterhead or something similar. So we wanted to separate the content of the letter, right, in that lazy template from the actual letterhead that's being used. And so this is one of the steps that we did here. And then if I click continue, this then generates that that letter, offers it up as a PDF with an envelope, and then we'll save it back to Docassemble as both a PDF and a docx file. So that's the integration that we've built out. It's been a lot of fun building it. I learned a lot in Python because this has a lot more Python code to it than anything else I've written, and it's also making sure that typing and unit tests and all that sort of thing worked was important for us because other groups are going to be relying on it, and so that was what we built. I think I've got like a minute left. Otherwise, I'll be turning this over to whoever's next.
Yeah, Michael, let's take a minute for questions since I know you have to sign off before we get to the more open-ended time at the end. So
I
any
think I'm actually going to
questions?
stick around. So
Oh, you are
don't
going
worry
to be.
about
Okay,
it.
great. Uh, Um, all right. Well, I realized we had an add-in, which is my fault. Jack's going to be sharing a little bit about the VS Code extension. So actually, I'm going to turn it over to whoever from the mobile first team is going to present.
All right, that will be me. Cool. So, hello everyone. I'm gonna start with a very quick introduction about us. We are we are essentially a web, mobile, and cloud development agency. And first of all, we are based in India, and uh, these are the kind of things we do. Like we have done document automation plus interviews. We also have done some work with Tesseract. Uh, Currently, we are more focused on workflow management and external API and SDK integrations. Outside of that, like fintech integration is one of our biggest thing. These are some of the solutions we have built, and I'm gonna give a very quick journey of what we have done with for a financing organization. And yeah, let's take a let's go to. So the problem statement we had was this team was manually doing agreement creation for anyone who is applying for lending, and these are structured lending, unstructured lending, uh, and they had data in LMS system. We call it lead management system, or a CRM system, customer relationship management system. So we created a plugin from CRM system to import certain data to Docassemble, and we also stored it with Postgres. So simply, uh, so we also provided them a simple dashboard, so their internal team can generate different kind of documents. So we customized the dashboard.yml file little bit to reflect their needs. Uh, and let's assume uh, uh, we also use lot of document branching. They had different kind of documents, so we eliminated close to 16 different type of documents when we created this Docassemble form. So this is something every one of us can learn here, that how we can do document branching. Uh, Another thing we learned, and this is especially for developers, is when we are testing out different forms, we found a very nifty utility called fake filler. So that's something we use to fill the form. So, and that kind of provides us more relatable data than a random data we generally put in. Uh, uh, and I think I'll go really fast from here, uh, but we have most of the things. We also added validation, but things I wanted to show over here is so all this data which we are currently filling manually. This is all we are taking from CRM and some lead loan origination system and loan management system. So we currently are integrated with two loan origination system where all the information we are receiving from JSON format. And so that's how it becomes very easy for us to uh, it becomes very easy for us to maintain all this information. Uh, We also added addendums. So if they have a other document which they want to add, they can add it over here. And here we are generating a document. Oops. Okay. So this is a demo day error. uh, I'm really sorry, but it generates a PDF. And other thing what we have done on this project is it is we are leaving space for automated stamp paper and e-signature related things. So that's how it is done. I also would like to showcase another project which we have done over here. That is customizing dashboard. And in this product also, we have customized the look and feel of the forms as well. So this looks slightly rich because of different color schemes. And we'll also see the forms and progress bars. We also have analyze or change certain progress bars and other things over here. So that is another thing we have achieved with Docassemble. I'm happy to take more questions, and thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, Arpan. So we definitely do have some time for questions if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about any of the customizations or anything else about Arpan's project. And we can also just jump right into the next presentation, and people can think about that and digest and have some discussion points in the ending 20 minutes or so. So let me see, looking at my list, Brian.
Thank you, Quentin. Yeah, let me jump in. Share my screen. Cool. Yeah, brief bit of background. Like I said already, I am a co-founder of a property technology startup that uses Docassemble quite extensively. And I just thought this would be potentially quite an interesting little tidbit of potential integration for other Docassemble community users. It was a bit of a tangent from my usual stream, so I'll just jump straight. So basically, one of our clients is a large residential property developer. I think the largest residential property developer in Africa. They have been engaged in a big digitization drive, digitizing all their processes. We were initially involved in their agreement of sale that we digitized and allowed for dynamic contract generation based on the different developments, different clauses, and also for digital signing. But then subsequent to that, there's also another process that they have where once you've bought a property from them, you obviously then at some point need to take possession of the keys. And the existing process for that is obviously, was a manual one where the person would, a representative of the property company would meet the property owner, hand over the keys, and complete a form capturing the details of who took possession of the keys, and then also meter readings of all the electrical meters, water readings, gas, and so on. And so they wanted to digitize this, manual form and allow for a sort of like a tablet person could just complete all the information on the tablet. So initially, being very much in Docassemble, I thought, perfect for Docassemble. You could simply, how it worked, we integrated with another platform where the digital handover was booked. So the data payload of the person who was going to be taking possession of the keys and the unit details and all the rest, all of that data was pushed. We had an integration via AWS EventBridge. So upon that booking event, we would be pushed a payload of JSON data, which we would every bucket. And then we prototype this whole thing out. So you'd have a Docassemble interview that the person with the tablet or the mobile phone in the field would start the interview. The interview would fetch the day's handovers from the S3 bucket, and then pre-populate the relevant fields, etc., and allow for the handover to be conducted and signatures captured on the tablet. And at the end of the process, a signed handover document would be pushed back into another system that we integrated with. So this worked very well. We were just about ready to deploy there. Slight twist. One of the managers at the property company raised the issue that internet connectivity at some of the sites was extremely patchy. And so they required that the solution be offline first. And that necessitated a bit of a radical rethink. And, not being someone who's developed extensively in mobile applications or anything like that, I was a bit concerned at a loss, but I had remembered that a good friend of mine works extensively in Africa, remote parts of Africa, a marine scientist conducting fish surveys. And I remember that he used an open source solution called ODK, which is as the name suggests, open source. Well, let me get on to the next slide. So basically, I had to then investigate whether ODK could potentially solve this problem of providing an offline first application. So ODK, acronym for Open Data Kit, I think it was developed by the University of Washington as an open source tool for sort of data collection survey in areas without internet without connectivity. And it allows for data collection on Android mobile devices and data submissions to an online server without internet connection. Obviously, once there's internet connection, that's when the data gets pushed to the server. So just briefly, and I'm not going to go into any of the nitty-gritty details, but ODK uses, in the way that Docassemble uses your YAML to define your questions, ODK uses a standard XLS form standard, which is basically a spreadsheet where you would, in certain columns, put certain things to indicate that this is this type of question and all that kind of stuff. So, and then, so that's the form standard we use. And then there's the ODK Collect application, which is an Android application that you can then, you sync the form that you've created to your Android application. And then once it's on your phone, you can go offline and you will be able to conduct the survey. And then ODK server is the server that will ultimately, where you load your form you've created and allows them to sync to the application, and also the other way around, the application pushes data that has been collected back to the form once it gets an connection. So then the process started to try and integrate my existing solution with ODK. So luckily, similar to Docassemble, there's a self-hosted Docker option for the ODK Central, which, thanks to my experience with Docassemble, wasn't particularly difficult. And how I've architected it is the Docassemble runs a sort of cron job at midnight every night that deletes the existing surveys, what they call surveys, interviews, effectively the handover appointment on the ODK server, and then creates the surveys for the next day. And so that was quite a task to sort of dynamically create these handover appointments, because they needed to be pre-populated with the specific details of that handover, the property name, the buyer, all of that. So I had to use the pandas library to sort of dynamically generate these XLS forms, and then push the generated ODK the form into the ODK Central server, and then authorize certain mobile devices to be able to access them, and then they would then sync from the ODK Central server on the day of the handovers, and then they would have a list of handovers back offline. And that is the process that was then followed. And at the end of each day, there's a different cron job that runs that then collects all the data that is in XML format, and then converts that into a Python dictionary, and then basically headlessly runs the existing Docassemble interview that I'd created to generate the document and push the resulting signed document back into S3. So I realized that was very dense, a lot of information. So just to maybe give you a sense of what that looks like practically, I'll just share my screen with screenshots just to make it a bit easier. 2 seconds. sorry, just want to find the relevant screen. There we go. So yeah, it's very similar sort of form gathering tool, but okay, so that's just starting from the beginning. You have your ODK collect application on your mobile device. You open it up. It then syncs you click on start new form. You've got a little refresh button there where you can load all the forms that it pulls from the server. So on this case, there's only one. And then it goes to capturing the details of who's conducting the handover. And then these are all the pre-filled details that pull through that I created through the API. And the idea is that the person conducting the handover then can just confirm the person's identity, that yes, this is the person who can check the identity document, take a photo of the identity document. It just shows the details, and then capture the details of the water meter number and the reading. Same for electricity. If there's gas, the same for the gas. And then capture the signatures of each party. So obviously in the presence of the person taking handover. And then at the end of the process, once this has been pushed back into the Docassemble API, once Docassemble fetches this information from ODK Central via the API, it produces a signed document with all the information and all the photos that are captured. Yeah, sorry if I rushed through that a little bit, but just thought it was really interesting that Docassemble being effectively a logic box can cater for any kind of integration and can sort of orchestrate all these different processes and integrations very nicely, and managed to still be very useful, even though it itself is not offline capable. Through this integration, I was able to sort of circumvent that and come up with a solution for this particular client. That's my presentation.
Yeah, Ryan, super interesting. I'm going to just take moderator's privilege and ask a question. So with looking at the ODK interface, do you spend a lot of time in recreating the form that you create in Docassemble? Do you just create it in the ODK environment? Is there any kind of automation to translate between the two interview formats?
So it is quite engineered, because luckily, as you can see from the sort of the interview, it is not particularly complex. Right. So to create, I can actually just give you an example quickly of what it ends up looking like. This is, like I said, the XML form standard is a spreadsheet. And so this is an example. This is exactly what you saw on the previous screen. This is what allows that to happen, is the spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is created from Docassemble using the pandas library, using the data that gets pulled from the S3 bucket to be able to pre-populate the fields. So once it's all set up, it's quite there's no extra work, but it was quite a lot of engineering just to get to this point. But yeah, so you can see here you've got like you'd have a text question, water meter number, and then I've got like just sort of variables for testing. But then the pre-populating stuff was quite tricky, because you have to like sort of, there might be multiple people who are eligible to take handover, and you've got to then the person has to choose which one actually has appeared on the day to take handover. But yeah, so if that answers your question.
And are those kind of hard-coded IDs there, it looks like, as well?
So those are IDs that were pulled from the S3 bucket. So the person who booked the handover, their data is all on that system, and that comes to us in a payload, and then their name, surname, ID number, email gets pushed to our system. So then we use that to create this form and have those fields like pre-populated. And if they choose that person, that it then indicates at the end, the person who signs is the person who they chose in the beginning, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks. Yeah, that was really, really interesting to think about. I don't know, Caroline, maybe there's some bells ringing for you too, being in an area with lots of connectivity issues as well. I don't know if anyone has any other questions. I don't want to be the only person to ask a question, but it's okay.
The other thing that makes me think of, I've just discovered, and I don't know if they would have this, is you can, So when you go get keys made, you know, because you're also talking about there's still this physical handover of keys. At our equivalent of B&Q in the US, you can you can put your key into a machine and there's a computer code or something. So I can give that code to my children. One is in El Salvador, one is somewhere else. If they have that code, they can go to a local machine, a local, you know, B&Q type, Home Depot, give the code to the machine there, and they get their key made. So that's almost, I mean, I don't know if that would be kind of a cool thing to incorporate into this offline.
Yeah, for sure.
Feed the key, and of course you need those machines, and they need to be online and that kind of thing. But that would be sort of a new addition to this whole handover thing. And I think this would be great in Alaska. I also think this would be great in Alaska, this ODK integration. I think it would be incredible.
Yeah, ODK, you know, from the research I've done, it's a very mature, simple platform, and it's worked seamlessly so far. So that's been, yeah, really nice to know that there's an offline solution.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Some really interesting presentations so far. Jack, you want to share a little bit about the VS Code integration that you developed?
Yeah, sure. So I'll do that real quick. So my name's Jack Adams, and basically, let me screen share. What I did was trying to use VS Code to do my YAMLs for Docassemble stuff, and I was like, this is kind of frustrating because I don't feel like I can really see what I'm doing very well. And I like the playground. It had the different syntax highlighting, and so fire up VS Code. If you guys can see this, so like here's your normal YAML, sort of just a generic, you know, one you load up in VS Code, and you're like, okay, cool. You know, I have my question and my my keyword and my value, and so it's like, okay, it's all right. But then down here, I've got this code, and I can't really tell what it is because it's all just like green strings, and this is just based on the theme color, right? So I put together an extension, which I'll share the link here in a minute, but you can also search it up, called Docassemble YAML. And so what it does is it provides the syntax highlighting so that it's easier to work with the YAML. So if we enable the extension and then switch back over here, you can see based on the colors from my own theme, you can see that now we have syntax highlighting. So this code block, you know, our if statement is here, and then variable name. And so you get different highlighting, like here's the keys method. And so then that is in a different color. Your string is properly colored. You know, integers, booleans are handled properly. Here's a dictionary. And so you can see that it's handling the syntax highlighting correctly and all this. But then even the YAML itself, you can see like we still have the key and the value, but then it also handles the Mako. So we've got our Mako if statement here, and then this is highlighted. And so it handles all these different scenarios. So this is something I put together. It's really kind of hacked together. I could show the code later, or it's on GitHub. But basically, I just took the YAML, Python, Jinja, and Mako and shoved all the languages together into one extension and just pretended it was a new language. And then within that, I have to do some injection. There's a little bit of regular expressions to handle, like the fact that this needs to be a Python code block to handle it appropriately. As a result of that, there's a couple of goofy things, like here's this block. And so if I put it below, so there's a code block in this question, and then if I put this default value below the code block, it's not actually highlighted properly. That's something I don't have a good solution for right now, so I've kind of just left it be. So those kind of little things, like, okay, we just put the default above and we put the code block at the end of this, but then this is a new key value pair, and so this causes it to reset, and so then it treats this properly. So like I said, it's not perfect. There's a couple little goofs like that you might find using it, but overall I found it to be significantly better way to use VS Code and just be able to keep track of, you know, what I'm doing and be able to read through my YAML a lot quicker and just have a better sense of what's going on when I'm writing more complicated documents.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And yeah, I'll take the last 8 minutes approximately to share with you a little bit about some of the ways that we're using large language models, both at Suffolk and at Lemma Legal. So just for the context, what I'm going to show you is going to be a demonstration of some of the features of the Docassemble AL toolbox, which is basically a toolkit of very non-opinionated bits and bobs you can grab for your Docassemble interviews. So if you want to use just some useful features we've built out here, you don't have to use the full assembly line framework. You can just pull in just little bits that you can have available, functions, classes, custom data types from the toolbox. And the one that I'm going to be demonstrating is the llms.py module here, which just has a couple of different functions in it to make it easier to use the OpenAI large language models. So we have a chat completion, which is kind of our generic one, an extraction model here, wrapper, a goal matching, goal seeking. That was actually by far the most complicated one to build. A classifier, a tool that lets you get a draft of a bunch of different pieces of text and then combine it into one synthesized response. So imagine you have a question and answer session with a user and you want to create a single response because that's what the form demands or letter demands. That's what that's for. And then this ability to define fields from, this is actually goes along with this extracting. So if you extract some answers from a long narrative, you might want to define those answers in your interview. And I'm going to just show you what that looks like. So here we're going to just experiment with the goal matching. And this is a demo I've been doing a couple times. I'll share it at our LIT conference next Monday, and again at the New York State statewide legal aid conference, which is not that actually. It's something a little different. It's now the education conference that's coming up on next Thursday. You can learn more and ask more about it then as well. But the idea here is, okay, let's assume we have some open-ended question. And in this case, let's pretend there's a box on a form. Court forms can use language as complicated and dense as this. It's like, why do you want to get relief under the warranty of habitability? Somewhat realistic. And basically it's why, what kind of problems are you having with your landlord in terms of them not making repairs in your home? And I'm going to just answer, I have bed bugs. Behind the scenes, the large language model is being provided this set of bullets, and it's going to say, evaluate the user's response. I have bed bugs. See if it meets all three of these points. Have they answered all three of these questions completely and in enough detail to match this rubric? And we're using the less powerful model here, the 3.5 model. And we would expect this is not complete, right? We haven't hit all three of these points. So this is a question that's generated dynamically by GPT 3.5, a follow-up question. And I could go, simple or detailed, but the point is it's going to keep prompting me until I've given enough information. And it's been tuned to be not too annoying. It's not going to ask you 20 questions ever. And actually, I think the limit is set at 10. But it's also going to be fairly forgiving in how detailed you are because we don't want to annoy users. Obviously, the more we get from the user, the better. But what we've done here is this is a very minimal response. And again, we're not too strict. It can be tuned to be stricter if we want it to. And it's synthesized our colloquy into a single short paragraph. If we click continue, it's going to now take that very small bit of interactions we've had and do something more complicated with it. It's going to generate a full demand letter. This is the prompt that we gave it. And importantly, it says here, use the law of Massachusetts. And he sees a really nice starting point here. It's correctly cited 105 CMR 410. When I've run this, it's non-deterministic. I've sometimes gotten it to cite the set of the CMR, which is the Code of Massachusetts Regulations. It cites the general statute that the warranty of habitability falls under instead. And this is a pretty nice letter. something you might want to do, instead of having it generate a whole letter for you, is to have it just generate 1 or 2 of the paragraphs and have some boilerplate there that you can control and make sure it has all of the citations instead of just most of the citations you want. And this is just saying a reasonable time frame, but under Massachusetts law, we have this consumer protection law, which gives somebody extra enhancements if they get a 30-day demand letter, right? So you don't always want to leave all this up to the large language model, and you don't have to with this integration. This is the other use case. This is the data extraction use case. In the previous example, the large language model generated all of the follow-up questions. In this scenario, we're thinking the user wants to start by giving a long narrative response, which is realistic. That's often how, I don't know what percentage of people who come into a legal aid office or an attorney's office do want to start by telling a long story about why they're there, but it's significant. I'd say at least it's a third. They won't want to start with your questions. They're going to want to tell you why they're there first. So imagine that that's what these questions are here. This is what the lawyer wants to know. And the user is going to start by telling their whole life story. And we're going to see, okay, you've already told us 5 of the things we wanted to know about. We're not going to bother to ask you follow-up questions for the things that you didn't tell us, that you did tell us already. But we have our questions and we have our script. We know it's a great script. We want to get to those questions we've written rather than using the large language model to generate questions on the fly, which we can't control or predict what they look like. So I'm going to just answer a couple of these. And I'm going to do it in a way that's really great for the large language model to be able to use. So here we're giving something that looks like an address, but I didn't say my address is. And I'm going to give the name of a movie, but I'm not going to say that it's a movie. This is the kind of ambiguity that the large language model can handle really well. And let's say, okay, right, you can say all kinds of irrelevant things too, and it can skip through those and just, we only care about these 3 things. Let's see if it's picked up that I've answered 2 out of 3. And it's going to ask me about my name here. This is a question that we've pre-written, that we've done usability tests and validation from experts on. I don't want the large language model to generate this question about the person's name. I want to go through and use my version of that question. And that's exactly what we're getting here. And you see here, we have the chance to review and confirm the details, and it has correctly picked up that that's an address, that this is a movie, and it's done nothing with the irrelevant stuff. So that can be a really nice user experience for somebody. The other thing that you can do here is, I'm just going to go quick for simplicity here. You can do some translation, and this might be like cleaning up the user's response. Maybe they don't use proper grammar. Maybe they forget punctuation. It can be a simple kind of cleanup task, or it can be a more strict kind of translation from one tone or formality to another, plain language to formal language, or vice versa, or from Spanish to English. Imagine you have an interview in Spanish. The landlord needs to receive the letter that it generates in English. And this is a simple one, but turns out GPT-4, and actually even 3.5, does a great job of translating a much more robust translation results than you get with something like Google Translate. So this is the part where we're focusing right now. I'll also say that we've been working to integrate functionality into our Weaver tool, which is a template-driven automation tool that generates Docassemble interviews. We've been integrating large language models into that process as well. And I'm not going to demo that right now, but one thing we've built is an auto labeling tool for Word documents. It's not turned on this server. I have it on another server here, where it is turned on with all the API keys. And what it does is it lets you upload a Word document and get back a draft translated documents. And it costs about 10 to 20 cents per document, which is a pretty good deal compared to spending a half hour or so doing all of it from scratch. But I will stop there because I promised we'd end right around now and go into more open-ended question time. And I'm going to also stop the recording. And we're going to have more open-ended discussion.